they surveyed out 450,000 acres of land, and these lands were surveyed for sale, and today comprise the town of the city of Nelson, the wider area of the Richmond Plains, Motueka, the town, the Abel Tasman coastline, and part of Golden Bay as well. Just over 5,000 acres of reservations were set aside, but the deal that they did with us when they met with our ancestors is that 1/10 of all those lands would be returned back to us so that we could participate in this burgeoning new economy that was to develop. So that was the proposition that the Wakefield's put to us, and our ancestors, we agreed on principle, because we liked the idea that we would be able to trade with this new market. That we decided that Nelson would be developed where it is. We would grow our crops, we would trade, there'd be a mutually beneficial relationship. Meanwhile, we'd still own everything else from the mountains to the sea. So that was the idea. Unfortunately, that's not what took place. 1/10 of the land was not set aside. That would have been 45,000 acres. Instead, only 5,000 acres ended up coming to us. And of those 5,000 acres, the majority of those lands were leased out perpetually. That's a word, if you don't know it now, you should get used to hearing it. Perpetual leases discriminate against us, and have since their inception, since they started. Perpetual means forever. And those series of perpetual leases essentially ended up alienating us from our lands. And we had two types of lands that were in this deal. One type was the endowment lands, or the tents lands, and the other type were our occupation reserves, all those areas that comprised our urupa, our mihinga kai, our tauranga waka, our canoe landing places, our areas for gathering medicine, our cemeteries, our villages, our gardens. They were also included in this 5,000 acres of reserves set aside. Over a period of time, the New Zealand government, I sort of glossed over that, they established themselves, and they ended up inheriting the administration of our estate. So instead of the Wakefield Company, now it was the New Zealand government, and they set up a series of administrators, like the Native Trustee. They did the whole Māori Land Court thing and individualised title, the Māori Trustee, and over time they whittled away at the estate, and so we had 5,000 acres, and of that, when they were needing to build schools or roads, they often came to us in the first instance, and those public amenities and infrastructure came from our lands. So schools, public works, roading, and then also some was sold freehold to Europeans who continued to have an insatiable appetite for our land. Our people, the result of this is that many of our families moved away. We moved away into other tribal areas. We went and lived with our relatives. Some of us moved back into the Waikato, some moved back to Taranaki, some moved into completely new areas or married into other tribal areas, and some of you are descendants of those relationships, those alliances today. We lived in destitution. We had no control over our estate. We couldn't determine who lived on our land, how much they paid to live on our land. Essentially, we'd become like passive rent collectors. This continued up into 1974, when the government decided that they'd conduct a commission of inquiry, and they'd go around and ask owners of multiple owned Māori lands how they would like to best manage their estate. And in 1974, over 3,000 descendants of the original ancestors that met with the Wakefields in 1841 met at Takapuahia Marae in Porirua and decided to form Wakatu Incorporation. Now those 3,000, in excess of 3,000 descendants, they were descended from a group of 284 individuals that met with the Wakefield Company in 1841 at a place called Kaiteretere. Kaiteretere is where we met the New Zealand Company. It's the place where we got our blankets and beads. And there's lists out there of what we received in exchange for the 450,000 acres. The Waitangi Tribunals found, I think, that 171,000 is what should be contained within the 10th estate, but we still continue to argue that the majority of the region was never paid for, was never agreed to. So there's still lists that sometimes as staff in wakatu I provide that list that shows the adzes and the nails and the crockery and the bottles of whiskey and the tobacco that our ancestors received at Kaiteretere. Today Kaiteretere is known as one of the world's top 10 beaches. It's a beautiful, picturesque icon of our region. It's the place that most visitors choose to enter the Abel Tasman National Park, New Zealand's most visited national park. They start there at Kaiteretere. And for us that's our waitangi, that's where it all began. From 1974 up to 1977 there was a whole lot of administration that took place, and in 1977 Wakatu Incorporation was born. And there's an image there from that occasion. At that stage the reservations totaled less than 3,000 acres. 45,000 acres short. Our owners come from those original ancestors in 1841. We come from the people of Ngāti Koata, Ngāti Rārua, Ngāti Tama and Te Atiawa. Today there are more than 3,000 shareholders in the incorporation holding more than 10 million shares, representing a kinship base of, and we estimate this, between 18 to 20,000 people that are today descended from those original ancestors at Kaiteretere. We're wakatu, we're the people of the land and sea of this area. We embrace our history and our values. As we grow our business, we honour and respect our past.